Hey, welcome back. I am Chris. I'm the pastor at Compass. As always, I'm really glad you're with me today, especially because we did it. Pop the confetti. This is the last message in our long journey through the book of Matthew. And to be honest, I feel a little bit of pressure to stick the landing. It would be a huge bummer to have spent 4.5 years, 35 sermon series, and 189 messages only to stumble across the finish line today. And lots of books, TV shows, and movies have actually done this. They were awesome until they got to the end and they fell flat on their face. People hated the ending of Game of Thrones so much that it ruined the series for a lot of people. There was a doctor show in the 80s called St. Elsewhere. It ran for 6 seasons, and at the end, you find out that the whole show took place in the imagination of a little boy with autism. Or another 80s show, Dallas, where you find out it was all just a dream. They botched the ending. But there are times where they nail the ending. For example, what movie ends with the line, "There's no place like home"? You probably knew that one immediately, The Wizard of Oz. What about this? The truth is, I am Iron Man. Well, that one's obvious. But what about roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads. It's one of the best final movie lines in history, and it's Back to the Future. The thing about a great last line is that it perfectly sums up the heart of a story, while at the same time leaving room for more story to be told. When Matthew wrote his gospel, I'm sure he thought a lot about how to end it. What is the perfect closing line to wrap up Jesus' story? Well, let's find out. But first, a little bit of background. It had been a whirlwind period of time for the disciples. They scattered when Jesus was arrested. They hid while he was crucified, and they only came back together after his burial. But then they started hearing that his tomb was empty. And then there were people saying that they saw him alive, and nobody knew what to believe. When all of a sudden, Jesus showed up in the room with them, alive, physically resurrected. And after proving he was real and eating a meal, Jesus explained how this had all been God's plan, that everything had been leading to his death and resurrection, to Jesus' life after death. And Matthew, he wrote all of this down from Matthew 1:1 all the way through Matthew 28:17. And as his narrative of Jesus' life comes to a close, Matthew wrapped everything up in 3 final verses. Let's look at them in Matthew 28:18 through 20. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Here we are in the closing scene of Matthew's gospel, and Jesus gave his disciples 3 instructions in something that's called the Great Commission. And here they are. First, to go and make more disciples, to baptize them, and to teach them to obey everything he commanded. The Great Commission is the foundation of Christian evangelism, but it also has a lot of baggage. I mean, the first piece of luggage is that it kind of has a negative vibe. Go and make disciples. If my job is to make 40 widgets in a workday and I only make 10, then I'm objectively doing a bad job. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. And I've been in a lot of church settings where the vibe is that if you aren't making disciples, if you aren't pumping out widgets, you are a failed Christian and a disappointment to God. For some people, the Great Commission is a huge source of guilt. The second heavy lift as it relates to it is the fact that a lot of historical efforts to convert people have been questionable at best and terrible at worst. Throughout history, the church has embraced the tools of empire to coerce people into conversion using violence, intimidation, and force. Pope Innocent III, who expanded the Crusades in the 12th century, he basically sanctioned torture and intimidation to force people to get baptized. In more modern times, Native Americans were compelled to convert under threat of violence, while their children were kidnapped and placed in Christian schools. Richard Henry Pratt, who led one of those schools, he said this. He said, "In Indian civilization, I am a Baptist because I believe in immersing the Indian in our civilization, and when we get them under, holding them there until they are thoroughly soaked." Gross. Add to this the fact that in general, people don't like being pressured to convert to any religion. And then you can see why some Christians have a hard time with the Great Commission. But this is the end of Matthew's book. And if it can make or break the whole story of Jesus, we should probably take a closer look at it. So let's do this. Let's examine each of the 3 instructions Jesus gave, and let's see how Jesus handled those things himself. So let's start with go and make disciples. Again, the word make can feel so compulsory, like it's saying go and make disciples by any means necessary. But Jesus made disciples in Matthew's gospel, so how did he do it? Well, let's look at Matthew chapter 4, verse 19 through 20. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. When Jesus made his first disciples, it looks like he just invited them to join him. Like he said, hey guys, God sent me to announce the kingdom of God and bring it to life in the world, and I'd love it if you came along. And they did. They became disciples. Look at Matthew 9:9. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. This is Matthew biographically writing about when he became a disciple. And it looks about the same. Jesus invited Matthew to follow him, and Matthew did. So twice, Jesus invited people to be his disciples, and he's 2 for 2, perfect record. Well, let's look at Matthew chapter 21 through 22. Jesus answered, if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. Again, Jesus makes the invitation, and clearly this guy said yes, right? Well, look at it again, Matthew 19:21 through 22. It says, when the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. So Jesus had him bound and beaten until he agreed to follow. Okay, now, obviously that last part didn't happen. Jesus didn't have the guy, tied up and beat up because he didn't follow him. But there are 2 other things that didn't happen either. The man didn't become a disciple, and Jesus didn't pressure him when he said no. Jesus didn't threaten punishment or tell the guy he was going to hell. And here's why. The Great Commission is invitation, not intimidation. Jesus invited people to come follow him, but he didn't make them do it. He didn't twist arms. He extended a hand. He didn't threaten, guilt trip, or use scare tactics to make people into disciples. He warmly invited them, and he allowed them to accept or not. It isn't a hammer to enforce faith. It's an open door. Which brings us to another observation. The Great Commission is free will, not force. Jesus' second instruction was to baptize these new disciples. Again, if you look at the Great Commission the way it has been applied in the past, this feels compulsory. It's like something you do to them. After I make you a disciple, I am going to baptize you. You don't have a choice. And if you don't, I'm going to go Pope Innocent III all over you. This is how the Great Commission can come across when we view baptism as compulsory and coercive. But what was baptism like for Jesus? Look at Matthew 3:13 through 15. Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. But John tried to deter him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? Jesus replied, let it be so now. It is proper for us to do this to fulfill all righteousness. When Jesus got in line to be baptized, John was like, you don't need to do this. You should be baptizing me. And Jesus said, yeah, but it's the right thing to do, so let's do it. Nobody forced Jesus to be baptized. He chose it freely. Can I tell you one of my pet peeves? We all have TikTok or YouTube videos that we want to share with other people, and that's fine. But I hate it when people shove a phone in my face and say, hey, you need to watch this. What am I supposed to do? Say no and slap the phone out of your hand? You just made me a hostage. Don't do that. Just text it to me. Give me the freedom to watch it in my own time with my own phone in my own hands, an appropriate distance away from my face. Don't force me to watch your video. Respect my free will and let me choose to watch it. Unfortunately, respecting free will is still something many Christians have a hard time with. The 10 Commandments are great, but forcing them into classrooms by using the levers of political power is definitely not the way of Jesus. Nobody wants kids to read inappropriate content, but forcing book bans on people isn't the way of Jesus either. Particularly when you realize that the people in history who banned books were almost always the bad guys. Forcing Christian values and practices on people is not the way of Jesus. His way is giving them the freedom to choose, just like he did. Jesus chose to be baptized because obeying God is the fruit of free will, not force. And actually, that word obey is another reason the Great Commission has negative vibes. Jesus' instructions were to make disciples, to baptize them, and then to teach them how to obey. And that word, it's just kind of yucky. It has a negative connotation, like take your medicine or else. Obey your parents, obey your teachers, obey the rules. And I'm not saying that's all bad, but it feels like do this because I say so, not because you want to. And now we're supposed to go teach people to obey. If someone said you need to teach your child to obey, are you going to thank them for that good advice? Or oh my gosh, if someone said you need to teach your husband or your wife some obedience, get out of here. Teaching people to obey rules, it doesn't seem like a great sales pitch for Christianity. So what is Jesus talking about? What commands do we have to teach people to obey? Look at Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. There are 613 commands in the Old Testament. 613 commands that we could teach people to obey. But Jesus simplified it for all of us. He said, forget all that. Just do this. Love God and love your neighbor. And if you do that, everything else is covered. Look how he said it in the Last Supper before his death in John 13:34. A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Jesus instructed his disciples to do a lot of things in his ministry, but this is the only time in the Gospels he directly refers to anything he said as his command. This is Jesus' preeminent command, to love God and to love each other, which helps us understand this about the Great Commission. The Great Commission is about relationship, not rules. Teaching people to obey everything Jesus commanded is not showing them the rules of religion and then enforcing obedience. It's showing them how to cultivate and prioritize right relationships with the God who created them and the other people they share the world with. Faith in Jesus, it isn't about jumping through religious hoops. It's about building bridges with love, just like he did. Relationship, not rules. Looking at how Jesus lived it out, maybe there's a better way to interpret the Great Commission, like this. Therefore, go and invite people to be disciples, encouraging them to choose baptism and teaching them to love God and love their neighbor like Jesus did. Knowing this, what does it look like for you to make disciples? How do you invite your friends and family in? How do you honor their free will while still encouraging them to choose Jesus? And how do you love in such a way that everyone can see that your faith is rooted in relationships, not rules? Ask God to help you answer those questions. And when you do, go live them out. That's the Great Commission in action. So here we are 189 messages later, not just at the end of Matthew, but standing at the edge of something new. Jesus' final words are a calling. It's a mission, not a mic drop. He's inviting us to live like he lived, think like he thought, and do what he taught, to love without limits, to invite without pressure, and to teach relationship, not rules. And this isn't the end of Jesus' story. It's the beginning of ours. So let's go and be the church that makes the Great Commission feel like a great invitation, because the world doesn't need more pressure. It needs more Jesus. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for working your way through the Gospel of Matthew with me, and I'll see you next time.